I came back from the work trip a day early and saw my wife at the airport. She was picking someone up with flowers. She ran and jumped into the arms of another man. You know how people say surprises can save a marriage? Yeah, well, whoever came up with that gem of wisdom clearly never caught their wife playing airport reunion with someone who wasn't her husband. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let me rewind to the exact moment my life decided to cosplay as a bad daytime soap opera. So there I was, crammed into a middle seat on a 4-hour flight from Chicago, surrounded by a crying baby on one side and a guy who thought deodorant was optional on the other. I'd spent the last 3 days in back-to-back meetings, eating sad conference sandwiches and pretending to care about quarterly projections. The whole time, I kept thinking about Clara, my wife of 10 years, and how I'd been kind of a terrible husband lately. You know the type. Always working, always tired, always saying, maybe next weekend, to everything she suggested. So I did what any guilt-ridden husband would do. I changed my flight, came home a day early, and decided to surprise her with the kind of romantic gesture that would earn me at least 3 months of marriage credit. I even stopped at one of those overpriced airport flower shops, the ones that charge you $30 for roses that'll be dead by Tuesday. But hey, it's the thought that counts, right? I grabbed the biggest bouquet they had, red roses mixed with some white flowers I couldn't name if you held a gun to my head. And I also snagged a box of those fancy Swiss chocolates from the duty-free shop. The ones in the gold box that basically scream, I forgot our anniversary again, but at least I'm throwing money at the problem. Was our anniversary coming up? No. Did I forget the last one? Absolutely. Was I trying to build up some goodwill in the marriage bank account? You bet your ass I was. I walked through the airport with this stupid grin on my face, probably looking like every rom-com husband who thinks he's about to win the Nobel Prize for basic human decency. I'd even practiced what I was going to say in my head. Something smooth like, surprise, beautiful, your favorite husband is home early, or maybe miss me. I hadn't decided yet. The flowers were getting heavy, and I was pretty sure the chocolate was melting in my jacket pocket, but I didn't care. I felt good. I felt like maybe, just maybe, I was finally getting this whole marriage thing right. Then I rounded the corner to the arrivals area, and that's when the universe decided to pants me in front of the entire cosmic audience. There she was, Clara, my wife, the woman I'd shared a mortgage, a Netflix account, and a decade of my life with. She was standing by the barrier where people wait for their loved ones, and holy hell, she looked absolutely stunning. I'm talking movie star stunning. Her hair was done in those loose waves she usually saves for special occasions, and she was wearing that blue dress. You know, the one that cost more than my car payment and made her look like she'd just stepped out of a magazine. She had makeup on too, the fancy kind that takes her an hour to apply and requires more brushes than an art studio. And she was holding flowers. A bouquet so massive it could have had its own zip code. We're talking roses, lilies, orchids, the whole botanical garden experience. The kind of arrangement you don't just grab at the grocery store on your way home. No, this was a planned operation. This was a, I've been thinking about this for days and spent at least $100 situation. My brain did that thing where it tries to rationalize the irrational. Maybe she's picking up her sister? Her sister lived in Seattle. Maybe she's meeting an old friend? Her college roommate had moved to Portland. Maybe there's a perfectly innocent explanation for why my wife looked like she was auditioning for the Bachelorette finale. Then I saw him walk through the doors. Mr. Tall, dark, and I definitely have a gym membership I actually use. This guy looked like he'd been assembled in a factory that specialized in making husbands feel inadequate. Perfect hair that somehow looked professionally styled despite being on a plane for hours. One of those fitted button-down shirts that showed off the fact that he knew where the weight section of a gym was located. A smile that probably came with its own dental insurance commercial. And a rolling suitcase that looked more expensive than my entire wardrobe. Clara didn't just notice him. Oh no, she lit up like Times Square on New Year's Eve. Her whole face transformed into this expression I hadn't seen in years. The kind of genuine, unfiltered joy that people can't fake. And then, in what I can only describe as a move straight out of every airport romance movie ever made, she ran toward him. Actually ran. In heels. My wife, who complains about walking from the car to the restaurant, literally sprinted across the arrivals area like she was competing in the Olympics of infidelity. She squealed. I'm talking full Dolphin at SeaWorld levels of squealing. And then, And this is the part that really sold the whole nightmare. She jumped into his arms. Like a human kangaroo with commitment issues. He caught her, spun her around, and they hugged like they were reuniting after a war, not a business trip. The flowers, her flowers, the ones she brought for him, got crushed between them, but neither of them seemed to care. I stood there, 20 feet away, holding my pathetic airport roses and melting chocolates, watching my marriage die in real time. My arm went numb, not from the weight of the flowers, but from the weight of understanding that my wife had bought a better bouquet for someone else than I'd bought for her. That's when it hit me. The real kicker wasn't just that she was cheating. It was that she was putting more effort into cheating than I'd put into our marriage in months. Maybe years. I should have marched over there. I should have caused a scene. I should have done literally anything except what I actually did, which was pull out my phone with shaking hands and take a picture. Just one. The two of them, wrapped up in each other, her face pressed into his neck, completely oblivious to the world around them. Click. Evidence secured. Marriage officially photographed in its death throes. Then I turned around and walked back the way I came, dumping my roses in the first trash can I passed. The chocolate stayed in my pocket, probably creating a permanent stain on my jacket that would serve as a nice reminder of this moment every time I wore it. My legs moved on autopilot as I headed toward the parking garage, and somewhere between Terminal B and my car, I started laughing. Not the fun kind of laughing. The kind that makes people crossing the street speed up and avoid eye contact. I sat in my car for a solid 10 minutes, staring at that photo on my phone. Mr. Perfect Hair had a face now. He was real. This was really happening. And in that moment, sitting in a parking garage that smelled like exhaust fumes and broken dreams, I said out loud to absolutely no one, "Congratulations, Derek. You just walked into your own plot twist." I drove home on autopilot, which is probably illegal in some states, but felt pretty appropriate given that my entire life had just merged into oncoming traffic without signaling. My hands gripped the steering wheel like it was the only solid thing left in the universe, and somewhere around mile marker 15, I started humming. Not just any humming, mind you, but full-on breakup songs that I'd actively made fun of for years. Adele's "Someone Like You" came on the radio, and instead of changing the station like usual, I cranked that bad boy up and belted out the chorus like I was auditioning for American Idol's Divorced Dad edition. You know what's wild? I finally understood what she was singing about. All those years of Clara playing Adele in the car and me rolling my eyes, asking why anyone would listen to music that made them sadder. Turns out, when you're watching your marriage circle the drain in real time, sad songs hit different. They don't make you sadder. They make you feel less alone in your misery. It's like Adele was sitting in the passenger seat going, "Yeah, man, I told you this would happen. You should have listened to my entire discography as a warning." The drive home usually took 45 minutes, but I somehow stretched it to an hour and a half by taking every back road I could find. I wasn't ready to walk into that house yet. Our house, the one we'd bought 7 years ago after saving for what felt like forever. The house where we'd talked about kids someday, where we'd hosted Thanksgiving dinners and argued about paint colors and made love on the kitchen counter that one time after too much wine. That house suddenly felt like a museum of lies, and I was about to become its loneliest curator. My brain kept playing out these elaborate confrontation scenarios like movie trailers on a loop. In one version, I burst through the door, threw her suitcase out onto the lawn, and delivered some devastating one-liner that would get quoted on divorce forums for years. In another, I played it cool and sophisticated, confronting her over dinner with the evidence laid out on the table like we were in a courtroom drama. There was even a version where I just packed up and moved to Bali without saying a word, leaving behind nothing but a note that said, "Gone fishing. Forever." I'd always wanted to learn to surf, and suddenly starting over in Southeast Asia seemed less like a fantasy and more like a solid retirement plan for a 38-year-old man having an emotional breakdown. But when I actually pulled into our driveway and sat there staring at the porch light that I'd forgotten to turn off 3 days ago, reality crashed down like a piano in a cartoon. I wasn't going to flip tables or move to Bali or deliver Oscar-worthy monologues. You want to know what I actually did? I walked inside, microwaved some leftover pizza that was definitely pushing the boundaries of food safety, and watched Shark Tank in my boxers while sitting on the couch that Clara had insisted we buy from that overpriced furniture store downtown. There's something deeply philosophical about watching people pitch business ideas while your marriage spontaneously combusts in the background. Mr. Wonderful was tearing apart some poor entrepreneur's evaluation, and I just sat there thinking, buddy, you think that's brutal? Wait until you get blindsided by infidelity at an airport arrivals terminal. I ate 4 slices of questionable pepperoni pizza and didn't taste a single bite. The pizza could have been cardboard for all I knew. My taste buds had apparently filed for divorce along with my dignity. Around 10:30, my phone buzzed. I knew who it was before I even looked. Clara's name lit up my screen with a text that made me laugh so hard I actually did choke on my pizza crust and had to perform the Heimlich maneuver on myself using the arm of the couch. The text read, "Flight okay? Miss you, Red Heart." Miss me. She missed me. The same woman who'd been playing Olympic-level gymnastics with Mr. GQ at the airport 6 hours ago was now texting me a heart emoji and asking about my flight. The audacity was almost impressive. It was like watching someone rob a bank and then ask the teller if they validated parking. I stared at that message for a solid 5 minutes, watching the little red receipt pop up, knowing she could see that I'd opened it and was choosing not to respond right away. My first instinct was to reply with the photo. Just boom, attach the image, hit send, and let that grenade explode in her hands. But something stopped me. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was strategy, or maybe I'd just watched enough true crime documentaries to know that the spouse who stays calm and collected always comes out ahead in the end. Screaming and throwing things feels good for about 30 seconds, and then you're just the crazy person while they get to play the victim. No thanks. I didn't survive 10 years of marriage and countless passive-aggressive arguments about loading the dishwasher correctly just to lose my cool now. So I typed back, "Yeah, flight was fine. Traffic was terrible though. Probably gonna crash early. Love you." I even added a little emoji at the end, a sleepy face, because I'm apparently committed to this performance. Hit send. Watched it deliver. Felt my soul leave my body just a little bit more. She responded immediately, poor baby. Get some rest. I'll be quiet when I come to bed. Chinese food with Amy tonight, but I'll be home soon. Face blowing kiss. Chinese food with Amy. Sure, Clara. And I'm the Queen of England. Amy was her best friend from college, the one who lived 2 states away and hadn't visited in over a year. But I played along, sending back a thumbs up emoji because that's what you do when you're suddenly living in an alternate reality where your wife thinks you're an idiot. I sat there on that couch, surrounded by pizza crusts and my own bad decisions, and made a choice. No dramatic confrontations. No screaming matches. No begging her to explain or giving her the chance to lie to my face and make me feel crazy for not believing her. Instead, I was going to do something that men in my position rarely have the patience or emotional bandwidth to do. I was going to shut up, observe, gather evidence with the thoroughness of a seasoned detective, and strike with the kind of precision that would make a surgeon jealous. This wasn't about revenge, not really. Okay, maybe like 30% revenge. But mostly, this was about making sure that when the dust settled and the lawyers got involved, I wasn't the one left holding the bag while she rode off into the sunset with Captain America over there. If Clara wanted to play games, fine. But she was about to find out that her husband, the guy she apparently thought was too busy and oblivious to notice, had just enrolled in the master class of strategic divorce planning. I pulled out my laptop, opened a new folder, and titled it Project New Beginning, with a sarcastic little smile. If she could post about new beginnings with her side piece, I could reclaim that phrase for my own purposes. I uploaded the airport photo, noted the date and time, and started a spreadsheet. Yeah, a spreadsheet. Because nothing says, I'm handling my emotional trauma in a healthy way, quite like Excel formulas and color-coded rows. The rest of the night passed in this weird fog of numbness mixed with hyperfocus. I heard Clara come home around midnight, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor, her voice singing softly to herself in that way she did when she was happy. She peeked into the living room, saw me asleep, on the couch with the TV still on, and I felt her kiss my forehead before she headed upstairs. That kiss felt like a betrayal on top of a betrayal. A forgery of intimacy from someone who was out there collecting the real thing from someone else. But I didn't move, didn't flinch, just kept my eyes closed and my breathing steady, playing the role of the clueless, exhausted husband who had no idea his wife was living a double life. And somewhere in the darkness behind my closed eyelids, I smiled. Not a happy smile. More like the smile of someone who just realized they're way better at poker than they thought. Game on, Clara. Game on. The next morning, I woke up on the couch with a crick in my neck that felt like someone had tried to twist my head off during the night, which honestly seemed appropriate given the circumstances. Clara was already up, humming in the kitchen and making coffee like she hadn't just destroyed our marriage in high definition at an airport terminal. The smell of French roast wafted through the house, and I could hear her loading the dishwasher. The same dishwasher we'd argued about loading correctly for approximately 9 years. Funny how those arguments seemed adorable now compared to the whole sleeping with another man situation. I stretched, groaned loud enough for her to hear, and shuffled into the kitchen wearing my best. I'm just a tired husband who definitely didn't spend half the night plotting your downfall face. It's amazing what you can accomplish with acting when properly motivated by betrayal. Clara turned around with a smile that would have melted my heart 2 days ago, but now just made me want to check if the homeowner's insurance covered emotional fraud. Morning, sleepyhead, she said, pouring me a cup of coffee in my favorite mug, the one that said, world's okayest husband, which felt like a personal attack from the universe at this point. You were out cold on that couch. Bad flight. I took the coffee and nodded, keeping my face neutral. Yeah, you know how it is. Turbulence, delays, the usual nightmare. Unlike the nightmare of catching your wife in someone else's arms. But hey, who's counting? Actually slept terribly. Might head into the office for a bit, catch up on some work. She touched my arm with what I'm sure she thought was wifely concern. On a Saturday? Derek, you just got back. Take it easy. Got some reports to finish up? I lied smoothly, because apparently I was discovering all sorts of new talents this week. Besides, the office will be quiet. I can focus better. Focus on destroying your affair, I meant, but potato. Clara kissed my cheek. Actually kissed my cheek like Judas kissing Jesus, except with better lip gloss, and went back to her coffee. Well, don't work too hard. I'm meeting the girls for brunch later, so I'll be out most of the day. The girls. Right. I'm sure that's exactly where she was going. I'd bet my left kidney that brunch with the girls was code for midday rendezvous with Mr. Perfect Hair, but I just nodded and smiled like the oblivious husband she thought I was. An hour later, I was sitting in my office downtown, door locked, blinds drawn, looking like I was about to hack into the Pentagon, when really I was just logging into our shared credit card account. Our office building was one of those modern glass structures that tried way too hard to be cool, with exposed brick and industrial lighting that made everyone look like they had jaundice. On a Saturday morning, the place was practically empty except for Janet from accounting, who apparently had as much of a life as I suddenly did. I pulled up our Bank of America account and stared at the login screen for a second, my finger hovering over the mouse. This felt official somehow, like crossing a line I couldn't uncross. But then I remembered Clara jumping into those arms, and my finger clicked so fast it probably broke the sound barrier. The transaction history loaded, and holy mother of spending sprees. It was like reading a novel titled, How to Cheat on Your Husband While He Pays the Bills. I scrolled through 3 months of charges, and let me tell you, the story they told was more detailed than anything Clara had shared with me during our nightly, how was your day conversations. There was a charge for $240 at some fancy Italian place downtown called Marcello's. The kind of restaurant that puts 3 raviolis on a plate and calls it deconstructed so they can charge you a week's grocery budget. We talked about going there for our anniversary. She'd said it was too expensive. Apparently, it was only too expensive when I was the one sitting across the table. Then there were hotel charges. Multiple hotel charges. The Riverside Inn, $189. The Grand Excelsior, $253. The Metropolitan Suites, $312. I did the math in my head. We're talking over $2,000 in hotel stays within the last 2 months. And unless Clara had suddenly developed a severe case of can't sleep in her own bed syndrome, she wasn't staying in those rooms alone. But the real kicker, the piece of evidence that made me laugh out loud in my empty office like a man who'd finally lost his grip on sanity, was a charge from Tiffany & Company for $176. Tiffany's. The same Tiffany's where I'd looked at engagement rings 10 years ago and nearly passed out from sticker shock. The same Tiffany's that Clara had dragged me past every Christmas, looking at the window displays with longing while I mentally calculated our mortgage payment. I tried to remember the last time Clara had bought me jewelry, or any gift that required more thought than grabbing something from the impulse buy section at Target. My birthday last year, she'd gotten me socks. Nice socks, sure, but still socks. Meanwhile, Mr. Wonderful was apparently getting the Tiffany's treatment while I was over here being grateful for footwear. I screenshotted everything, saving each image with meticulous file names. Clara_cheating_evidence_hotel_1. Clara_cheating_evidence_restaurant_2. Clara evidence Frederick. Okay, maybe not that last one, but I was tempted. But I wasn't done yet. Oh no, the credit card was just the appetizer. Now it was time for the main course, and I'm not proud of what I did next, but I'm not exactly ashamed either. Desperate times call for morally questionable measures, right? That's definitely a saying, or at least it should be. I pulled up Clara's iCloud account. We'd set up shared family access years ago when she kept forgetting her passwords and needed me to help her recover them. She'd never changed the recovery email. Still went to my old Gmail account that I rarely checked anymore. 20 minutes of password reset shenanigans later, and boom, I was in. Her photos, her messages, her entire digital life spread out before me like a buffet of betrayal. And there he was, in all his high-resolution glory. Selfie after selfie of Clara and her lover, whose name I discovered through some very loving text messages was, wait for it, Jared. Jared. Not even a cool name like Alessandro or Maximilian, or literally anything with more gravitas than Jared. This guy sounded like he should be selling you protein shakes at a strip mall GNC, not stealing someone's wife. Jared was the human equivalent of khaki pants. Boring, forgettable, and yet somehow everywhere you didn't want him to be. The photos were nauseatingly cute. Clara wearing sunglasses at some beach I'd never been to with her. Jared kissing her cheek at what looked like a hiking trail. The two of them at a concert, Coldplay, based on the stage setup, which explained so much about Clara's taste in everything. And the captions, oh my god. The captions made me want to throw my computer out the window and then jump after it. My person read hard. Read one caption under a photo of them holding hands at sunset. My person, lady, I'm legally your person. I had the marriage certificate and the joint checking account to prove it. Another photo showed them at some trendy brunch spot, mimosas in hand, with the caption, New Beginnings sparkles clinking glasses. New Beginnings. She'd actually typed New Beginnings like she was the protagonist in some self-discovery memoir instead of a woman committing adultery while her husband paid for her iPhone storage. I sat back in my office chair and laughed. Not the fun kind of laugh you share with friends over beers, but the kind that probably would have concerned anyone who heard it. New beginnings? The only beginning Clara was getting was the beginning of a very expensive court case, followed by the beginning of her life as my ex-wife, followed by the beginning of my existence as a man who would never, ever trust airport arrivals ever again. I downloaded everything. Every photo, every text message I could access, every incriminating caption. My Project New Beginning folder was getting fat with evidence, and I felt like a detective in one of those true crime shows Clara loved watching on Netflix. The irony wasn't lost on me. She'd spent countless evenings watching shows about people getting caught in lies while actively living one herself. If this were a TV show, the audience would be screaming at the screen. He's right there. He knows. Do something. But I wasn't going to do something. Not yet. I was going to be patient, methodical, and strategic. I was going to gather every piece of evidence until I had a case so airtight that even Jared's perfect hair couldn't blow it over. And then, when the time was right, I was going to serve Clara with divorce papers that would make her new beginning look a whole lot different than she'd planned. I closed my laptop, leaned back, and smiled at the ceiling of my office. New beginnings, huh? I said to nobody. Careful what you wish for, Clara. You just might get it. Turns out, shopping for divorce lawyers is weirdly similar to shopping for wedding vendors. Except instead of comparing cake flavors and flower arrangements, you're comparing hourly rates and how aggressively someone can legally destroy your spouse's life. Who says romance is dead? I spent an entire Sunday evening Googling best divorce attorneys near me, like I was searching for a good Thai restaurant. Except the Yelp reviews were way more entertaining and significantly more depressing. 5 stars. She took my ex for everything he had. 4 stars. Excellent communication, ruthless in court, made my cheating husband cry. This was my life now. I booked consultations with 3 different lawyers because I'm a thorough person and also because comparison shopping is basically my love language. If I was going to blow through my savings on legal fees, I wanted to make damn sure I was getting the best representation money could buy. Plus, meeting multiple lawyers meant multiple people would validate that I wasn't crazy, that what Clara did was genuinely awful, and that I deserved better than a wife who treated our marriage vows like suggestions on a shampoo bottle. My first appointment was Monday morning at 9 with Diana Shaw, whose office was located in one of those downtown high-rises that screamed, "We charge $400 an hour, and we're worth every penny." The lobby had marble floors, abstract art that probably cost more than my car, and a receptionist who looked like she'd been hired straight from a modeling agency. Everything about the place whispered, expensive, from the leather furniture to the coffee they offered me in an actual porcelain cup instead of a paper one. I half expected someone to ask for my credit card before they'd even let me sit down. Diana herself was exactly what you'd picture when someone says high-powered attorney. Mid-40s, perfectly tailored navy suit, hair pulled back in a bun so tight it could double as a facelift, and the kind of handshake that let you know she didn't mess around. Her office had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, and I'm pretty sure her desk cost more than my wedding hat. She gestured for me to sit in a chair that was somehow both uncomfortable and expensive, which felt like a metaphor for this entire experience. "Mr. Lawson," she said, settling into her chair with the grace of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. "Tell me what brings you here today." I pulled out my phone and opened the folder I'd titled Evidence of My Wife Being Terrible. Well, Ms. Shaw, my wife is cheating on me with a guy named Jared, and I have approximately 17 different ways to prove it, including photos, credit card statements, hotel receipts, and text messages that would make a romance novelist blush. I watched her face as I swiped through my carefully organized evidence. Most people would have shown some emotion, sympathy, shock, maybe a raised eyebrow. Diana Shaw's expression didn't change once. She could have been looking at a grocery list for all the reaction she gave. When I finished my presentation, which I'd practiced in my car like a deranged TED Talk, she sat back and steepled her fingers. "You've done half my job already," she said, and I swear I detected the tiniest hint of approval in her voice. "Most clients come in here with suspicions and feelings. You've come with a prosecutable case." "Yeah," I said, feeling oddly proud of my detective work. "Turns out betrayal brings out my productivity." "Who knew?" She almost smiled. "Almost. I charge $450 an hour, require a $20,000 retainer, and I don't lose. Your wife's infidelity gives us significant leverage in a fault-based divorce scenario. We can pursue a favorable asset division, and depending on her income and yours, potentially avoid alimony altogether." I nodded along, pretending I understood even half of what she was saying. The retainer alone made my stomach hurt, but something about Diana Shaw made me feel like I was hiring a sniper instead of a lawyer. Expensive, precise, and guaranteed to hit the target. My second appointment was that afternoon with Mason Grant, whose office couldn't have been more different from Diana's if it tried. Mason worked out of a converted brownstone in a neighborhood that was up and coming, which is realtor speak for still kind of sketchy, but getting better. His waiting room had mismatched furniture, old boxing posters on the walls, and a receptionist named Gladys who looked like everybody's grandmother and offered me cookies from a Tupperware container. The cookies were homemade and delicious, which somehow made me want to cry. Mason himself was a giant of a man, probably 6'4", with a shaved head and a presence that filled the room. He looked like he could have been a linebacker in another life, and his handshake nearly broke my fingers. His office was cluttered with case files, had a window AC unit that wheezed like it was on its last legs, and smelled faintly of coffee and old leather. This was a man who worked cases, not just collected retainers. "So," Mason said, settling into his chair, which groaned under his weight. "Your wife's cheating. You've got proof. What do you want, revenge or results?" I liked him immediately. No small talk, no corporate polish, just straight to the point. "Both," I said, "preferably with Wi-Fi access and snacks." He laughed, a deep rumbling sound that made me relax for the first time in days. "I like you, Derek. You've got a sense of humor, which means you'll survive this. Let me see what you've got." I showed him everything. The airport photos, the credit card statements, the hotel receipts, the Tiffany's purchase that still made my blood boil. Mason went through it all with the focus of a man examining evidence in a murder trial, occasionally grunting or nodding. When he finished, he looked up at me with something that might have been respect. "This is solid," he said. "Real solid. Your wife got comfortable, got sloppy. Used the joint credit card for everything. That's amateur hour. With evidence like this, we can nail her in court. I charge $250 an hour, 10 grand retainer, and I fight dirty when I need to." "Define fight dirty," I said, genuinely curious. Mason grinned, and it was not a friendly expression. "Let's just say I know how to make people uncomfortable on the witness stand. And if Mr. Muscles has any skeletons in his closet, I'll find them and bring them to the party." My third consultation was Wednesday morning with Patricia Hernandez, recommended by a buddy from work who'd gone through his own divorce 2 years ago. Patricia's office was somewhere between Diana's corporate fortress and Mason's working class setup. Professional but not pretentious, comfortable but not cheap. She was probably in her late 50s, with kind eyes and laugh lines that suggested she'd seen it all, and somehow maintained her faith in humanity anyway. "Derek," she said after reviewing my evidence, "I'm going to be straight with you. You have an excellent case. Your documentation is thorough, your timeline is clear, and infidelity in our state gives you significant advantages in asset division. But I need to ask you something important. What do you actually want from this divorce?" The question caught me off guard. What do I want? I want justice. I want her to know she can't just. "I understand that," Patricia interrupted gently. "But in 6 months, when the dust settles and the anger fades, what do you want your life to look like? Do you want to spend the next year in a bitter court battle, or do you want to get this over with and move on?" I sat there stumped. I'd been so focused on gathering evidence and planning my attack that I hadn't really thought about what came after. What did I want? To hurt Clara the way she'd hurt me? To make Jared regret ever stepping foot in that airport? Or did I just want to be free of this whole mess and start rebuilding my life? I said slowly, to come out of this with my dignity, my assets, and enough money to start over. I don't need to destroy her. I just need to protect myself." Patricia nodded like I'd passed some kind of test. "Then that's what we'll do. I charge $300 an hour, 15,000 retainer, and I specialize in getting my clients fair settlements without unnecessary drama. We'll use your evidence as leverage to negotiate a strong position, but we won't drag this out longer than necessary." By the time I left Patricia's office, my head was spinning with terms like asset dissipation, fault-based divorce, equitable distribution, and my personal favorite, marital waste, which apparently was the legal term for spending joint money on an affair. I'd become conversationally fluent in divorce law in approximately 72 hours, which wasn't exactly the skill I'd planned to acquire this month. But here we were. I sat in my car in the parking garage, reviewing my notes from all 3 consultations. Diana was the shark, expensive but guaranteed to draw blood. Mason was the fighter, cheaper and willing to get messy. Patricia was the strategist, moderate price, and focused on efficiency over vengeance. I pulled out my phone and stared at the contact information for all 3. This was it. This was the moment I officially started the process of ending my marriage. No more gathering evidence, no more pretending. Once I hired a lawyer, this became real. My finger hovered over Patricia's number, then moved to Mason's, then back to Diana's. "Screw it," I muttered, and started typing an email. "Let's do this right." So here's the thing about living a double life. It's exhausting, and I wasn't even the one cheating. While my lawyers were preparing legal documents that would eventually blow Clara's world apart, like a divorce-shaped atomic bomb, I had to play the role of loving, oblivious husband. You know, the guy who didn't know his wife was playing house with a man named Jared. The guy who still believed working late actually meant working and not doing whatever married people do when they're pretending they're not married. It was like being in a one-man play where the audience was just me, and the reviews were going to be catastrophic. Clara, bless her cheating heart, thought I was completely clueless. She'd come home from her errands, with that glow people get when they're doing something they shouldn't be doing, kiss my cheek with lips that had probably been on someone else an hour earlier, and ask me about my day like she actually cared. She even started making breakfast again, which she hadn't done since the Obama administration. Suddenly, I was waking up to pancakes and fresh coffee, and she was wearing actual pajamas instead of the ratty college t-shirt she'd been sleeping in for 3 years. One morning, she was humming while flipping eggs. humming, like she was the star of her own romantic comedy and not the villain in mine, when she turned to me with this smile that would have melted butter. "You know, honey, you're glowing lately. Did you start taking vitamins or something?" I almost choked on my orange juice. Glowing? Yeah, Clara, that's called revenge metabolism. It's what happens when your body burns calories by internally screaming 24 hours a day. It's the hottest new diet trend. Get betrayed by your spouse and watch the pounds just melt away through sheer rage and adrenaline. I should write a book. The Infidelity Diet. Lose weight and your marriage in just 30 days. Just sleeping better, I guess, I said, spreading butter on my toast with the kind of casual energy that deserved an Emmy. Work's been less stressful lately. She bought it. Of course she bought it. People who are busy lying assume everyone else is telling the truth. It's like a superpower of the morally bankrupt. The real test of my acting abilities came when Clara started talking about her big charity gala. Apparently, for the past 6 months, she'd been organizing this massive fundraiser event for the Children's Hospital Foundation, which would have been admirable if she hadn't been doing it in partnership with Jared's company. Yeah, that's right. My wife had been spending months planning an event with her lover, and I'd been supportive the whole time like an idiot. I'd listened to her stress about seating arrangements and auction items and catering options while she was probably sneaking off to hotel rooms with Mr. Perfect Hair between vendor meetings. The gala was scheduled for 3 weeks from now at the Grand Excelsior Hotel, the same hotel that had shown up on our credit card statement for $253, which suddenly made me wonder if they'd been using our money to scout the venue for their little charity project. The poetic irony was thick enough to spread on toast. "Derek, I almost forgot to mention," Clara said one evening while we were sitting on the couch pretending to watch some Netflix show neither of us was paying attention to. "You're coming to the gala, right? I put you down for a ticket months ago." I looked at her, this woman I'd spent a decade of my life with, and felt absolutely nothing except a strange sense of curiosity about how far she'd push this. "Of course I'm coming," I said, pulling her closer in what probably looked like an affectionate gesture, but was really just me wondering how she could cuddle with me while texting Jared goodnight on the phone she kept face down on the coffee table. "Wouldn't miss it for the world." She kissed my temple. "You're the best. And hey, Jared from Titanium Solutions will be there. He's been such a huge help with corporate sponsorships. I should introduce you too. I think you'd really get along." The absolute audacity of this woman could power a small city. She wanted to introduce me to her lover at a charity gala like we were all going to be best friends. What was next? A double date. Maybe we could all go bowling together, and I could watch him put his hands all over my wife while trying to pick up a spare. Fun times for the whole dysfunctional family. "Sure," I said, my voice so calm I barely recognized it as my own. "I'd love to meet Jared. Sounds like he's been a real pillar of support for you." If Clara caught the edge in my voice, she didn't show it. She just snuggled deeper into my side and went back to scrolling through her phone, probably reading messages from the very person we'd just been discussing. The woman had nerves of steel, I'd give her that. Over the next 2 weeks, I became Clara's perfect husband. I helped her pick the wine list for the gala, suggesting a nice Pinot Noir that paired well with betrayal. I listened to her debate between salmon and chicken for the main course, nodding thoughtfully like the menu choice was the most important decision in our lives and not, say, her decision to cheat on me. I even went with her to pick up her dress, a stunning red number that probably cost more than my monthly car payment and made her look like she'd just stepped off a magazine cover. "What do you think?" she asked, doing a little spin in front of the mirror at the boutique. The saleswoman was making those encouraging noises that retail workers are paid to make, but Clara was looking at me, genuinely wanting my opinion. "You look incredible," I said, and I meant it. She did look incredible. That was the really messed up part about all of this. Clara was still objectively beautiful, still the woman I'd fallen in love with years ago. The outside package hadn't changed. It was everything underneath that had gone rotten. "Jared's going to," I caught myself, pivoted smoothly. "Everyone's going to be blown away." She beamed at me, completely missing my near slip-up. "You really think so?" I wanted something that would photograph well. The local news is covering it, and they're bringing photographers. Perfect. Photographers. That would make what I was planning even better. Because here's the thing Clara didn't know. While she was busy planning her big charity gala, I was planning something too. Call it the Gala of Reckoning. Call it the night everything goes to hell. Call it whatever you want. But I was about to turn Clara's shining moment into the worst evening of her life, and I was going to do it with a smile on my face and a glass of that Pinot Noir in my hand. I'd already coordinated with Diana Shaw, who I'd ultimately hired because sometimes you need a shark in your corner, and she'd assured me that what I was planning was perfectly legal, if somewhat dramatic. It'll make the divorce proceedings more interesting, she'd said with what might have been amusement. But if you're committed to this course of action, I'll have everything prepared. Mason Grant, who I'd consulted for a second opinion because apparently I was now the kind of person who got multiple opinions on public humiliation strategies, had literally laughed when I told him my plan. You've got balls, Derek, he'd said. Bigger balls than most guys who come through here. Just make sure you're ready for the fallout. I was ready. I'd been getting ready for 2 weeks, playing the supportive husband while secretly coordinating with lawyers, photographers, and even a few carefully selected friends who deserved to know the truth before Clara's world came crashing down. I'd turned lying into an art form, which was ironic considering I was doing it to expose someone else's lies. The night before the gala, Clara was a bundle of nervous energy, running through her speech for the 10th time, making sure every detail was perfect. I sat at the kitchen table, laptop open, pretending to answer work emails while actually reviewing the final timeline for tomorrow night with Diana. Come to bed soon, okay? Clara called from upstairs. I need my good luck charm well rested for tomorrow. I'll be up in a few minutes. I called back, and then I muttered to my laptop screen. Your luck's about to run out, sweetheart. I closed my laptop and sat there in the quiet of our kitchen, looking around at the life we'd built together. The fridge covered in magnets from places we'd traveled. The wine rack I'd installed last summer. The plant Clara could never keep alive that I'd been secretly watering for months. In less than 24 hours, all of this would be different. There'd be no going back. I stood up, turned off the kitchen light, and headed upstairs. Clara was already in bed, scrolling through her phone one last time before sleep. Ready for tomorrow? I asked, climbing in beside her. She put her phone down and turned to me with a smile. Ready as I'll ever be. Thank you for being so supportive through all of this, Derek. I know I've been distracted lately, but it means everything that you're always in my corner. I kissed her forehead, a gesture that felt like goodbye even though she didn't know it yet. Always, I said. And technically, I wasn't lying. I would always be there, just not in the way she expected. The night of the gala arrived with all the fanfare of Judgment Day, except instead of angels and trumpets, I had a rented tuxedo that smelled faintly of mothballs and a heart full of very unchristian thoughts about revenge. I stood in front of our bedroom mirror, adjusting my bow tie for the 15th time, watching Clara behind me as she put the finishing touches on her makeup. She looked like $1,000,000, which was ironic considering how much of my money she'd spent on the guy who'd be waiting for her downstairs at the Grand Excelsior. You look handsome, Clara said, appearing behind me in that red dress that should have been illegal. She wrapped her arms around my waist and rested her chin on my shoulder, and we looked like a perfect couple in the reflection. All-American marriage, happy and in love, ready to attend a charity event together. If Norman Rockwell painted infidelity, this would be it. You look stunning, I said, and watched her eyes light up in the mirror. Really, Clara? Knockout gorgeous. She kissed my cheek, leaving a lipstick mark I'd have to wipe off. I'm so nervous. What if something goes wrong? Oh, something was definitely going wrong, but not in the way she was thinking. Everything's going to be perfect, I assured her, and the double meaning made me smile genuinely for the first time in weeks. Trust me, tonight is going to be unforgettable. We drove to the hotel in her car because mine was making that weird noise again, which was code for, I don't want to show up to my fancy event in your 10-year-old Honda. The Grand Excelsior was lit up like Christmas, with red carpet, actual photographers with actual cameras, and a line of luxury cars dropping off people who looked like they'd stepped out of a catalog for things Derek can't afford. The valet took Clara's keys, and I helped her out of the car like a gentleman, because that's what you do when you're about to ruin your wife's life in front of 200 of her closest friends and colleagues. The ballroom was ridiculous in that way that rich people events always are. Crystal chandeliers the size of compact cars, tables set with more forks than any human could possibly need, and ice sculptures that were definitely going to melt before dessert, but cost someone's annual salary anyway. There were banners everywhere announcing the Children's Hospital Foundation, which would have warmed my heart if I wasn't so focused on the fact that my wife had been planning this event with her side piece for 6 months. Derek. Clara. A woman I vaguely recognized as one of Clara's work friends materialized out of the crowd, champagne in hand and a smile plastered on her face. Janet? Janice? Something with AJ. You two look absolutely adorable together. Clara, that dress is to die for. Thanks, Jan, Clara said, confirming it was indeed a Jan something. Derek helped me pick it out. I smiled my best. I'm definitely not dying inside smile, and excused myself to grab drinks while Clara got swept up in small talk about auction items and silent bids. The bar was predictably crowded with people who wanted to get sufficiently lubricated before they had to listen to speeches and pretend to care about charity. I ordered a whiskey neat because wine felt too civilized for what I was about to do, and that's when I saw him. Jared, standing near the entrance in a tuxedo that probably cost more than my mortgage payment, looking like he'd walked straight out of a James Bond movie if James Bond was a home-wrecking asshole. His hair was perfectly styled, his smile was perfectly white, and I hated him with a perfectly pure hatred that felt almost refreshing in its simplicity. He was talking to a couple I didn't recognize, laughing at something with that easy confidence of a man who thought he'd gotten away with something. And maybe he had, for a little while. But tonight was going to be different. Tonight, I was going to make sure everyone in this room knew exactly what kind of man Jared was, and what kind of woman my wife had become. I grabbed my whiskey and started making my way through the crowd, keeping my eyes on my target. Clara was still trapped in conversation near the silent auction tables, so she didn't see me approaching her lover with the kind of determined stride usually reserved for confronting your boss about a raise or fighting someone in a parking lot. Jared, I said loudly enough that the people around us turned to look. I stuck out my hand with a smile that was all teeth and zero warmth. Jared from Titanium Solutions, right? I've heard so much about you. He turned, and I watched the recognition dawn on his face, followed immediately by something that looked an awful lot like panic. Oh, Derek. Yes, hi? Clara's told me so much about you too. He shook my hand, and I squeezed just a little harder than necessary, petty but satisfying. I bet she has, I said, still smiling. She mentioned you've been such a huge help with the corporate sponsorships. Really going above and beyond. I emphasized above and beyond, just enough to make it weird, and I saw his smile falter. Just doing my part for a good cause, he said, trying to extract his hand from my grip. I held on for another second, then released him. Well, I wanted to thank you personally. You've been spending so much time with my wife lately. I mean, really so much time. Late nights, weekend meetings, hotel conference rooms. I paused, watching the color drain from his face. It's amazing how dedicated you are. It's been a team effort, Jared stammered, and I could see sweat starting to form on his very expensive forehead. I'm sure it has been, I said, taking a sip of my whiskey. Hey, we should grab dinner sometime, the three of us. Really get to know each other better. What do you say? Maybe at Marcello's? I heard the ravioli there is incredible. Clara keeps talking about wanting to go there. I watched him process the name of the restaurant where he'd taken my wife on our credit card, and the panic in his eyes intensified. Before he could respond, Clara appeared at my elbow like a guilt-seeking missile. Derek, there you are? I see you've met Jared. She was smiling, but her eyes were screaming, what the hell are you doing? Just getting acquainted, I said cheerfully. I was telling Jared we should all grab dinner sometime. Build on this beautiful partnership you two have developed. Clara's smile could have cut glass. That's so sweet, honey, but Jared's incredibly busy. Aren't you, Jared? Swamped, Jared agreed quickly. Absolutely drowning in work. Shame, I said, and then I spotted exactly who I was looking for across the room. Marcus Chun, the photographer Clara had hired to document the event, who also happened to be a buddy of mine from college who I'd filled in on the whole situation 2 days ago. Oh, there's Marcus. Clara, we should get some photos taken together. You know, for posterity. I steered Clara toward Marcus before she could protest, leaving Jared standing there looking like he'd just been hit by a truck driven by subtext and innuendo. Marcus saw us coming and raised his camera with a knowing grin. The beautiful couple, Marcus announced. Let's get some shots of the organizer and her incredibly supportive husband. We posed, Clara's arm around my waist, my hand on her shoulder, both of us smiling like we weren't living in completely different realities. Marcus snapped away, and I made sure to position us so that Jared was visible in the background of several shots, watching us with an expression that looked like he'd swallowed a lemon whole. Now let's get one with Jared, I suggested loudly, waving him over. Come on, Jared. You're a huge part of this event's success. I watched Clara's face go through about 17 different emotions in 3 seconds. Panic, anger, confusion, and resignation, all fighting for dominance. Jared walked over like a man heading to his own execution, and Marcus positioned us in a triangle, Clara in the middle, me on one side, Jared on the other. Perfect, Marcus said, snapping photos rapidly. This is great. The whole team together. The flash was blinding, and I knew these photos were going to be legendary in divorce court. Clara standing between her husband and her lover, all three of us smiling for the camera like we were in on the same joke, except only I knew the punchline. Derek, Clara hissed under her breath, her smile never wavering. Can we talk for a second? Of course, honey, I said sweetly. But first, one more with just you and Jared. You know, for the corporate sponsors. Titanium Solutions needs some PR shots, right? I stepped aside, and Clara had no choice but to stand next to Jared while Marcus captured photo after photo of them together, their discomfort palpable to anyone paying attention. And I was paying attention. I was memorizing every nervous glance, every forced smile, every moment of this disaster they created. When Marcus finally lowered his camera, I pulled him aside. Make sure to get those photos to me, every single one. Especially the ones where they look close. Already done, buddy, Marcus whispered. They'll be in your inbox by midnight. Along with some bonus shots I've been taking all night of them when they thought no one was watching. I could have kissed him. You're a saint, Marcus. Nah, he said with a grin. I just really hate cheaters. The rest of the evening was pure cinematic gold. Every time Clara tried to sneak off to talk to Jared privately, I materialized like a well-dressed ghost, always with another reason we needed to stay together, photos with donors, conversations with board members, a toast to the foundation. I became her shadow, her incredibly inconvenient, increasingly suspicious shadow. By the time dessert was served, Clara looked like she'd aged 5 years, and Jared had disappeared entirely, probably to hide in the bathroom or fake a sudden illness. I sat next to my wife, eating chocolate mousse that tasted like victory, and whispered in her ear, "This has been such a wonderful night, hasn't it? Really memorable." She squeezed my hand so hard I thought she might break bones. "The best," she said through gritted teeth. I raised my champagne glass. To new beginnings, I toasted and watched her face go pale as I echoed the exact caption she'd used in her photos with Jared. Yeah, tonight was going to be unforgettable, all right. December 19th. I'd picked the date with the kind of careful consideration people usually reserve for wedding planning, which felt appropriate since I was basically planning the funeral for my marriage. It wasn't our anniversary. That would have been too obvious. It wasn't her birthday. I'm petty, not sadistic. No, December 19th was special because it was exactly 3 weeks after the gala. Just enough time for Clara to think she'd gotten away with everything. Just enough time for her to relax back into her double life like nothing had happened. Also, it was a Friday, and there's something poetic about ruining someone's weekend along with their marriage. I'd spent those 3 weeks being the most attentive husband since the invention of marriage. I'm talking breakfast in bed, foot massages, random flowers from the grocery store, the whole 9 yards of "I definitely don't know you're cheating on me" behavior. Clara ate it up like I was serving her validation on a silver platter. She even told her sister on the phone one night, loud enough for me to hear from the next room, that I'd really turned things around, and that she felt closer to me than ever. The irony could have powered a small nation. That morning, I woke up feeling weirdly calm, like how people describe feeling before skydiving or committing a felony. Clara was already up, humming in the bathroom while getting ready for work, completely oblivious to the fact that her Friday was about to go sideways in spectacular fashion. I made coffee, scrambled some eggs, and texted Diana Shaw a single emoji, the checkmark. She responded immediately. Process server will arrive at 6 p.m. sharp. Good luck. Good luck. Like I was about to take a test instead of ending a decade-long relationship. But I appreciated the sentiment. You're up early, Clara said, breezing into the kitchen in her work clothes, looking like she'd stepped out of a business casual catalog. And making breakfast? Who are you and what did you do with my husband? Just feeling domestic, I said, sliding a plate of eggs toward her. Thought we could have a nice dinner tonight, too. Just us. I'll cook. She looked surprised, but pleased, probably because I hadn't cooked anything more complicated than microwave popcorn in about 6 months. That sounds wonderful. I could use a quiet night in. Work's been insane. Work. Right. That's definitely where she'd been spending all her time, and not in hotel rooms with a guy whose name sounded like a pharmacy chain. Perfect, I said. I'm thinking pasta, wine, maybe we light some candles. Make it romantic. Clara kissed me on the cheek, grabbed her travel mug of coffee, and headed for the door. You're being so sweet lately, Derek. I love it. See you tonight. The door closed behind her, and I stood in our kitchen, eggs getting cold on my plate, thinking about how easy it is to lie to someone when you think they're too stupid to catch you. She'd been doing it for months, and she was good at it. I'd give her that. But I'd been doing it for 3 weeks, and apparently, I was better. I called in sick to work, which wasn't entirely a lie because I felt genuinely nauseous about what was coming. Not guilty, mind you. Just that sick anticipation you get before something big and irreversible happens, like the moment before a roller coaster drops or right before you send a text you can't take back. I spent the day cleaning the house like a maniac because apparently my response to emotional trauma was to become Martha Stewart. I vacuumed, dusted, even cleaned out the junk drawer that had been collecting takeout menus and dead batteries since we moved in. If I was going to burn my marriage to the ground, at least the floors would be spotless. Around 3, I went to the grocery store and bought everything for dinner. Fresh pasta, marinara sauce, a pre-made salad because I'm not a miracle worker, and a bottle of wine that cost more than $12 because this felt like a special occasion. The cashier made small talk about my fancy dinner plans, and I smiled and said something about keeping the romance alive. She had no idea she was helping me provision the last supper of the Lawson marriage. I got home and started cooking, which mostly involved boiling water and heating up sauce, but I made it look impressive by putting everything in nice dishes. I even found the fancy placemats we'd gotten as a wedding gift and never used. The table looked like something out of a home magazine. Candles, cloth napkins, the good wine glasses that we usually save for company. It was perfect, beautiful, completely devastating once you knew the context. At 5:30, I changed into decent clothes, nice jeans, and the button-down shirt Clara always said made me look handsome. If I was going to serve my wife with divorce papers, I was going to look good doing it. I checked my phone obsessively, watching the minutes tick down. Diana had confirmed the process server was on schedule. Marcus had sent me the final gallery of photos from the gala, including several shots that would make a divorce attorney weep with joy. Everything was ready. I was ready. Except I wasn't ready. Not really. Because how do you prepare for the moment you officially end a decade of your life? How do you steel yourself for the look on someone's face when they realize they've been caught? I stood in our dining room, staring at the perfectly set table, and felt a wave of something that might have been sadness if it wasn't buried under about 17 layers of anger and betrayal. Clara got home at 5:45, which was actually on time for once, probably because she thought we were having a romantic evening and not a legal ambush. She walked in, saw the table, and her whole face lit up in that way that used to make my heart skip and now just made my stomach hurt. Derek, this is beautiful. You did all this. She set her purse down and came over to inspect the table like it was a museum exhibit. And you cooked? Real food. Nothing but the best for my wife, I said, and the word wife felt strange in my mouth, like a piece of food I was about to spit out. She kissed me, and I let her, because in about 15 minutes none of this would matter anyway. We sat down, and I poured the wine, and we started eating like a normal couple having a normal Friday night dinner. Clara talked about her day, something about a difficult client and office drama I didn't care about, and I nodded and made appropriate sounds while internally watching the clock on the wall tick toward 6 p.m. 5:58. Clara was mid-sentence about someone named Bethany from accounting when I stopped listening entirely, focused only on the sound of my own heartbeat and the second hand on the clock. 5:59. She noticed I'd gone quiet. You okay, honey? You look pale. 6 p.m. The doorbell rang. Clara looked up, confused. Are we expecting someone? No, I said, standing up slowly. But I think that's for you. I walked to the door like a man walking to his own execution, except I was the executioner, and somehow that felt worse. I opened it to find a woman in her mid-40s holding a manila envelope, wearing the expression of someone who'd done this 1,000 times and knew exactly how badly it was about to go. "Clara Lawson?" she asked, looking past me into the house. "Who is it, Derek?" Clara called from the dining room. "It's for you," I said, stepping aside. Clara appeared in the hallway, still holding her wine glass, still smiling because she didn't understand yet. She looked at the woman, at the envelope, and I watched her brain try to process what was happening. "Mrs. Clara Lawson?" the process server repeated. "Yes." Clara's voice was uncertain now, the smile fading. "You've been served." The woman handed over the envelope with the efficiency of someone who wanted to get out before the screaming started. Clara took it automatically, staring at it like it might explode. "Served what?" I leaned against the doorframe, watching her face, and said quietly, "Justice." The process server left quickly, her job done, probably heading home to her own normal life, while mine imploded in slow motion. Clara stood in our hallway, holding divorce papers in one hand and wine in the other, looking between the envelope and me like her brain was buffering. "Derek, what is this? Is this some kind of joke?" "Open it," I said. "Read it. Take your time." She set down the wine glass on the hall table with shaking hands and tore open the envelope. I watched her eyes scan the first page, petition for dissolution of marriage, and saw the exact moment reality crashed into her. Her face went white, then red, then white again. "Derek, this doesn't make any sense." "Why would you?" She looked up at me, and I saw her trying on different expressions, testing which one might work. Confusion, hurt, innocence. "What's going on?" "Really?" I said, walking back toward the dining room. "You're going with what's going on? That's your opening move?" She followed me, clutching the papers. "Derek, seriously, I don't understand why." "December 3rd, I interrupted, pouring myself more wine because I was definitely going to need it. "Grand Excelsior Airport, Gate 7, around 2 in the afternoon. Does that jog your memory?" I watched the color drain from her face again, faster this time. "Got her. I can explain." "Oh, can you?" I pulled out my phone, opened the photo I'd taken that day, and held it up. "This better be good, Clara. Please, explain to me how you were planning to explain jumping into another man's arms at the airport." She stared at the photo, her mouth opening and closing like a fish drowning in air. "You were there?" "Surprise," I said dryly. "I came home early. Brought flowers. The whole romantic gesture thing. Instead, I got a front row seat to my wife's affair." Tears started forming in her eyes, and part of me, a small, dying part, felt bad. But then I remembered the hotel receipts, the Tiffany's charge, the months of lies, and that part shriveled up and died completely. "Derek, please, it's not what it looks like. It's not what it looks like." I actually laughed. "Clara, you literally jumped into his arms. You were holding flowers bigger than the ones I brought you. What exactly doesn't it look like?" She was crying now, mascara running down her face, the perfect image of the cheating wife caught red-handed. "It just happened. I didn't mean for it to." "Save it," I cut her off. "I know everything. Every dinner at Marcello's. Every hotel room. Every text message. Every selfie with your person. Yeah, I saw those too. Nice captions, by the way. Very poetic for someone committing adultery." Clara sank into a dining room chair, still holding the divorce papers, looking at our romantic dinner that had turned into the scene of a legal execution. "How long have you known?" "Long enough," I said. "Long enough to document everything. Long enough to hire an excellent lawyer. Long enough to watch you lie to my face every single day while playing the loving wife." "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, Derek. It was a mistake. I love you. We can work through this." I raised an eyebrow. "Work through this? Really? That's what you're going with?" "Because it looked like gymnastics at Gate 7, Clara. Olympic-level gymnastics. That's not a mistake. That's a lifestyle choice." The silence that followed could have cured tinnitus. Clara sat there crying, papers in her lap, while I stood drinking wine and feeling absolutely nothing except maybe a weird sense of relief. It was done. No more pretending. No more lies. Just the truth, ugly and final, and somehow freeing. "I loved you," I said quietly. "For 10 years, I loved you. And you threw it away for a guy named Jared." "Jared, Clara. That's not even a real name." She didn't respond, just sat there in the wreckage of our marriage, and I walked away, leaving her at the table we'd never eat at together again. The thing about divorce that nobody tells you is how incredibly boring it is between the dramatic moments. After you serve the papers and watch your spouse's world crumble like a sandcastle in a tsunami, there's this weird limbo period where lawyers send each other strongly worded letters, and you sit around wondering if you should keep the throw pillows or let her have them out of spite. Spoiler alert, I kept the throw pillows. Clara always hated them anyway, said they were too masculine for the living room, which was apparently code for, I want to redecorate this place for my boyfriend once I figure out how to leave you. Clara moved out 3 days after I served her. She didn't go far, just to Jared's apartment across town, which I knew because I still had access to find my iPhone, and she'd apparently forgotten we'd set that up years ago during a vacation when she kept getting lost. The irony of tracking my cheating wife to her lover's apartment using technology meant to keep her safe was not lost on me. Technology, bringing families together and tearing them apart since the iPhone 4. She tried calling me approximately 400 times that first week. I answered exactly once, on day 5, mostly because her voicemails were getting progressively more unhinged, and I was worried she might show up at my office with either an apology or a baseball bat. You never really know with betrayed spouses, even when you're the one doing the betraying of the betrayer. It's confusing, I know. Derek, please, we need to talk about this like adults, she said when I finally picked up, her voice doing that thing where she tried to sound reasonable while clearly on the edge of a breakdown. We are talking about it like adults, I replied, sitting in my office with my feet up on the desk like I was some kind of divorce boss. Through lawyers. That's literally the adult way to handle this. Clara, what did you want? A couples therapy session where we talk about your feelings for Jared. Hard pass. I made a mistake. You made approximately 63 mistakes, I interrupted, pulling up my spreadsheet because yes, I'd actually counted. That's how many times you used our joint credit card for your affair. 63 separate transactions. That's not a mistake, that's a hobby. She went quiet for a second, and I could hear her breathing on the other end, probably trying to figure out if crying would work through the phone. It wouldn't. I'd built up an immunity to her tears somewhere around transaction number 47, which was a $200 charge at some spa, where she'd apparently gotten a couple's massage with someone who wasn't her husband. I want to fight for us, she finally said, and I had to admire the dedication to a sinking ship. There is no us anymore, Clara. There's you, there's me, and there's a legal document that's going to make sure we never have to see each other again, except maybe at mutual friends' weddings where we'll both pretend the other doesn't exist. I'm honestly looking forward to it. That was the last time we spoke directly. Everything after that went through Diana Shaw, who handled Clara's attempts at negotiation with the kind of cold efficiency that made me understand why I was paying her $450 an hour. Money well spent, turns out. Clara's lawyer was a guy named Richard Pemberton, who looked exactly like you'd picture a lawyer named Richard Pemberton. Mid-50s, receding hairline, suits that cost more than my car, and the personality of a particularly aggressive parking ticket. He tried to fight the divorce settlement like he was defending someone in a murder trial instead of a woman who'd gotten caught cheating with photographic evidence. Mr. Lawson's claims are exaggerated, Pemberton argued during our first mediation session, which was held in a conference room so aggressively neutral it made Switzerland look opinionated. My client admits there was an indiscretion, but the evidence of financial impropriety is circumstantial at best. Diana didn't even look up from her notes. We have credit card statements showing 63 transactions related to the affair, including hotel stays, jewelry purchases, and restaurant bills. We have photographs. We have text messages. The only thing circumstantial here is Mr. Pemberton's understanding of the word circumstantial. I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing. Clara, sitting across the table from me looking like she hadn't slept in a week, shot me a look that could have stripped paint. Jared, notably, was not present, probably because bringing your mistress's lover to divorce mediation is frowned upon in polite society and also would have resulted in me throwing a chair. The mediation went about as well as you'd expect, which is to say it was a disaster that somehow still moved things forward. Pemberton argued that Clara deserved 50% of everything because that's how community property works, conveniently ignoring the part where his client had been using community property to fund her extramarital relationship. Diana countered with the affair evidence, the financial records, and something called dissipation of marital assets, which is lawyer speak for Your client spent joint money on her boyfriend, and that's super illegal. We're prepared to go to trial. Pemberton threatened at one point, puffing up like a bird trying to look bigger than it is. Diana smiled, and it was not a friendly expression. Please do. I would love to present this evidence in open court. I'm sure the local news would be very interested in covering it, especially given Mrs. Lawson's prominent role in the charity community. Nothing says pillar of society quite like committing adultery and using marital funds to do it. I watched Clara go pale. The gala had gotten decent media coverage, and the last thing she wanted was to become known as the charity organizer who'd been sleeping with her corporate sponsor. Pemberton must have seen it too because he immediately started backpedaling like a cyclist going downhill with no brakes. Perhaps we can discuss a settlement, he said, which in lawyer language means please don't destroy my client publicly. We settled 3 weeks later, and it was better than I'd hoped for. 60-40 in my favor, which Diana had fought for like a gladiator armed with evidence and righteousness. I got the house, all of it, including the throw pillows, plus my retirement accounts, my savings, and a division of assets that left me in solid financial shape. Clara got her car, her personal belongings, and whatever money she'd managed to squirrel away in her own accounts. She also got Jared, which honestly felt like punishment enough. You could have pushed for more, Diana told me after the papers were signed, sitting in her office that still intimidated me even after months of meetings. The evidence was strong enough to go for 70-30, maybe even more. I didn't want more, I said, and I meant it. I wanted fair, and I wanted out. Mission accomplished. She nodded, and I swear I saw something like respect in her expression. You handled this better than most of my clients. Usually, there's more screaming, sometimes throwing things. Oh, I wanted to throw things, I assured her. I just did it privately, in my own home, at inanimate objects that couldn't press charges. The final divorce decree came through on a Tuesday in February, arriving in my mailbox between a pizza coupon and my electric bill. 10 years of marriage, reduced to a legal document that weighed less than a magazine. I sat in my car in the driveway, my house, my life, and read through it one more time. Dissolution of marriage granted. Assets divided. Clara Marie Lawson and Derek James Lawson were now officially just two people who used to know each other. I went inside, pulled out the bottle of cheap whiskey I'd been saving for this moment, and poured myself a generous glass. Then I poured another one because the first one was gone faster than my marriage had been. I sat on my couch now, not our couch, and looked around at the house that was finally, completely, legally mine. My phone buzzed with a text from Diana. Congratulations on your freedom. This arrived at my office for you. Attached was a photo of a coffee mug that said, "Trust no one who buys flowers at the airport." I laughed so hard I almost spilled my whiskey, which would have been a tragedy given how well it was going down. I texted back, "You're my favorite person right now." "I know," she replied. "That'll be $200 for the text message consultation." She was joking. Probably. That night, I ordered Chinese food from the place Clara always said was too greasy, ate it straight from the containers because there was no one to judge me, and watched whatever I wanted on TV without negotiating. I fell asleep on the couch at 9:30 because I was exhausted from months of stress, and also maybe the whiskey, and I slept better than I had in years. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight streaming through windows I didn't have to share, in a house I didn't have to fight over, living a life that was completely and totally mine. Was I bitter? Maybe a little. Was I angry? Sometimes, when I thought about it too much. But mostly, I was free. And freedom, it turns out, tastes a lot better than anything they serve at Marcello's. By spring, I'd become one of those annoying people who talk about their journey and their growth, like they'd just summit Everest instead of simply surviving a divorce. But honestly, I'd earned the right to be a little insufferable about my comeback. While Clara was busy posting inspirational quotes on Instagram about rising from the ashes, I was actually doing the work of rebuilding my life from the ground up, one small victory at a time. First order of business was my car, which I'd been neglecting for so long it had basically become a four-wheeled cry for help. That weird noise I'd mentioned to Clara? Turned out it was the transmission begging for mercy and several other mechanical issues that my mechanic listed off like he was reading a CVS receipt. I could have just traded it in, started fresh with something new, but there was something therapeutic about fixing what was broken instead of abandoning it. Unlike some people I could name. I spent 2 Saturdays elbow deep in engine grease, YouTube tutorials playing on my phone, relearning how to care about something that had been ignored for too long. When that engine finally purred to life without sounding like a dying walrus, I felt more accomplished than I had in years. Next came the gym, because apparently post-divorce men are legally required to get a gym membership and start posting shirtless mirror selfies. I skipped the selfies. I have some dignity left, but I did join the 24-hour place down the street that smelled like rubber and broken New Year's resolutions. Turns out, lifting heavy things and putting them back down is surprisingly effective therapy. Way cheaper than actual therapy too, and you get biceps out of the deal. I wasn't trying to become Mr. Universe or anything. Just wanted to feel like I inhabited my body again instead of being a ghost haunting my own life. Plus, spite is an excellent motivator. Every time I wanted to quit, I'd imagine Jared's stupid perfect hair, and suddenly I could do 5 more reps. The real surprise came in the form of Lydia Chun, a veterinarian I met at a coffee shop when I accidentally grabbed her latte instead of mine. She was wearing scrubs covered in what I hoped was dog hair, had glasses that kept sliding down her nose, and laughed at my terrible apology joke about how this was the most excitement I'd had since my divorce. Most women would have grabbed their correct coffee and run. Lydia asked me to sit down and tell her the story. We talked for 2 hours about everything and nothing. Her job dealing with neurotic pet parents, my job dealing with neurotic clients. The bizarre overlap between the two. She told me about the Great Dane who'd eaten an entire Thanksgiving turkey, bones and all. I told her about catching my wife at the airport. She didn't do that thing people usually do where they get uncomfortable and change the subject. Instead, she said, "Well, at least you didn't waste another 10 years finding out she sucks," which was somehow exactly what I needed to hear. We've been dating for 2 months now, taking it slow because I was apparently traumatized and she was patient enough to deal with my baggage. Lydia laughed at my bad jokes, texted me photos of puppies during her workday, and, here's the revolutionary part, didn't hide her phone. Ever. She'd leave it face up on the table during dinner, answer texts in front of me, and once even handed it to me to show me a funny video. The trust was almost uncomfortable at first, like I'd forgotten what normal looked like. Meanwhile, Clara was all over social media with her redemption arc, working on me. Read one caption over a photo of her doing yoga at sunset. New chapter, new energy, said another with her holding a green smoothie like it was the cure for adultery. Growth isn't linear, she posted last week, which I'm pretty sure was code for Jared and I are fighting, but I'm making it look spiritual. I'd blocked her after the divorce was final, but mutual friends kept sending me screenshots because apparently my suffering was entertainment. Sure, Clara, you work on you. Maybe you and your next victim can take a pottery class together. People at work had started asking the inevitable questions. "Man, you doing okay? You seem different," said Tom from sales, who'd been divorced twice and apparently recognized the look. "Aren't you bitter about the whole thing?" I'd thought about it, genuinely examined my feelings like I was in some kind of emotional science experiment. Was I bitter? Maybe a little, in the way leftover coffee gets bitter if you leave it too long. But mostly I was just relieved. "Nah," I told Tom, leaning back in my chair with my feet up because I was having a good day and felt like being insufferable about it. "I'm not bitter. I'm marinated in sarcasm. There's a difference." And there was. Bitterness meant I was still stuck, still angry, still letting Clara and Jared live rent-free in my head. Sarcasm meant I'd moved on, but kept my sense of humor about the whole ridiculous situation. I could laugh about it now. The airport flowers, the elaborate detective work, serving divorce papers over romantic pasta. It was absurd. My whole marriage had been absurd toward the end, a bad sitcom that ran too many seasons. "That's actually pretty healthy," Tom said, looking impressed. "My second ex-wife still makes me want to throw things." "Give it time," I advised sagely, like I was some kind of divorce guru now. "And maybe try the gym. Throwing weights is more socially acceptable." That night, Lydia came over with Thai food and a foster puppy she was trying to socialize. A scraggly little terrier mix with trust issues and a tendency to pee when excited. We ate pad thai on my couch while the puppy nervously explored my living room, and I realized this was what happiness felt like after devastation. Not the fairy tale, Instagram-worthy kind. Just the quiet, comfortable kind where you're eating noodles with someone who doesn't lie to you. in a house that's actually yours, living a life you'd built from the rubble. This is nice, Lydia said, reaching for another spring roll. Yeah, I agreed, watching the puppy finally relax enough to chew on a toy. Yeah, it really is. A year later, I found myself back at the Grand Excelsior Airport, which felt like returning to a crime scene, except I was the victim, the detective, and somehow also the guy who got away clean. Life's funny like that. I was there to pick up Lydia, who'd been at a veterinary conference in Portland for 3 days and had sent me approximately 67 photos of other people's dogs, which was somehow endearing instead of annoying. Growth, ladies and gentlemen. That's what we call growth. I parked in the same garage where I'd had my breakdown a year ago, walked through the same sliding doors, and headed toward the same arrivals terminal where my marriage had died in high definition. The whole place still smelled like bad coffee and regret, but this time I was on the other side of the disaster, standing in the wreckage with a story to tell instead of a life falling apart. Gate 7 was right there, looking exactly the same. Same uncomfortable chairs, same flight information screens, same spot where Clara had jumped into Jared's arms like a scene from a romance movie written by someone who'd never understood what romance actually meant. I stood there for a second, staring at that spot, waiting to feel something dramatic. Anger, maybe. Sadness. The ghost of betrayal past coming back to haunt me. Instead, I felt nothing. Well, not nothing. I felt hungry and slightly annoyed that Lydia's flight was delayed 20 minutes, but that was about it. The spot where my marriage ended was just a spot now, no more significant than any other patch of airport floor. People walked past, dragging suitcases and checking their phones, completely unaware they were crossing ground zero of Derek Lawson's divorce origin story. And that was fine. That was actually perfect. My phone buzzed with a text from Lydia. Just landed. See you soon. Warning. I smell like airplane, and I bought you a novelty coffee mug that says, "World's okayest boyfriend, face with tears of joy." I laughed out loud, earning a weird look from a woman waiting nearby, but I didn't care. The fact that Lydia had seen my old "World's okayest husband" mug, understood the joke, and bought me an updated version was exactly the kind of attention to detail that made her fundamentally different from Clara. She saw me. She heard me. She remembered the small things that mattered. Passengers started trickling through the doors, and I scanned the crowd with the kind of anticipation that actually felt good instead of anxiety-inducing. Then I saw her, Lydia, wearing jeans and a hoodie with a vet clinic logo, pulling a small suitcase and looking slightly disheveled in that way people look after breathing recycled air for 3 hours. Her face lit up when she spotted me, and before I could think about it too hard, she dropped her suitcase and ran toward me. And here's the thing. She actually ran into my arms. Like, legitimately jumped and hugged me the way Clara had hugged Jared in this exact terminal a year ago. Except this time, I was the one being hugged. I was the one someone was excited to see. I was the destination, not the departure. "I missed you so much," Lydia said into my shoulder, squeezing me tight enough that I worried about my ribs, but didn't care. Portland was great, but also exhausting, and I just wanted to come home. Home. She said home, and she meant wherever I was. Not her apartment, not some hotel room, not some fantasy life with someone else. Just me. Here, real and present, and not hiding anything. "Missed you too," I said, and meant it with every fiber of my being. "How was the conference? Learn anything groundbreaking about canine medicine?" She pulled back, grinning. "So much, but I'll tell you in the car. Right now I just want food and to hear about your week, and maybe take a nap on your couch while you tell me about it." We walked out of the terminal together, Lydia's hand in mine, her suitcase rolling behind us, and I thought about everything that had happened in the past year. The betrayal, the investigation, the divorce, the rebuilding. All of it had led here, to this moment, back in the same airport, but as a completely different person. Here's what I learned from the whole catastrophic mess. Always trust your gut, especially when it's screaming at you that something's wrong. My gut had been sending up flares for months before I caught Clara at the airport, but I'd ignored it because acknowledging the truth would have been inconvenient. Turns out, inconvenient truths are still better than comfortable lies. Never chase people who can't even spell loyalty, let alone practice it. Clara had shown me who she was, someone who could compartmentalize her life so thoroughly that she lived in 2 separate realities without breaking a sweat. That's not a partner. That's a sociopath with good hair. Some people aren't worth fighting for. and recognizing that isn't giving up. It's called having standards. And finally, the big one that took me almost a year to fully understand. Sometimes getting cheated on is just life's brutal way of saving you from a lifetime of pretending you're happy. If Clara hadn't jumped into Jared's arms at that airport, I might have spent another 10 years in a marriage that was dying slowly instead of catastrophically. I would have kept making excuses, kept compromising, kept settling for someone who saw me as an option instead of a priority. The betrayal hurt like hell, but it also set me free to find something real. So yeah, she jumped into another man's arms at Gate 7, Grand Excelsior Airport, on a Tuesday afternoon that changed everything. But in the end, I landed on my feet, holding the biggest bouquet of all, the one that actually mattered, my self-respect, a rebuilt life, and someone who ran toward me instead of away. We got to the parking garage, and Lydia stopped at my car, examining it with the critical eye of someone who appreciated maintenance. "You fixed the weird noise." "Among other things," I said, unlocking the doors. "Turns out I'm pretty good at fixing what's broken when I actually care enough to try." She kissed me, soft and real and completely without agenda. "I'm glad you care." "Me too," I said. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I meant it.